Well, welcome. I want to begin today with one of my favorite Psalms, Psalm 34. It starts this way: I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise will continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. The humble will hear it and rejoice. Magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. And what I'm trying to do here, what we are trying to do, is magnify the Lord. We've learned these last weeks about who is the Lord. That in the Hebrew is Yahweh or Jehovah. And Jesus is claiming to be Yahweh in the Hebrew scriptures, as he claims to have met with Abraham, and he claims not only to have met with Moses, but to be the one who spoke to Moses from the burning bush. Not only was Jesus calming a storm with his disciples, he was the one. The Son was parting the Red Sea and allowing the people of Israel to go through on dry land. We learned that the Father has never been seen. He can't be seen. He's invisible. Jesus is the image of the invisible God. He receives the worship as God. The Father is in Jesus. He is in the Son. But the Son is fully representing the Father with the full authority of the Father to act, including creation. Well, we saw that Jesus had control of the wind and the waves. In the boat with the disciples, he had control of the wind and the waves and the water as he parted the Red Sea. We saw that the water stood up like walls on either side of the people going through. And that same property of turning the sea into a wall, he used when he walked on water. He changed the properties of the water so that not only he could walk on it, but someone else got a chance to walk on it with him. Peter was able to walk on water as well for a time. I want to go now to John chapter 8. We've been in John chapter 8 for these first comments of Jesus. And I want to go to the beginning of John chapter 8, where he's talking to a group of people. Well, let's just start reading in John 8, starting in verse 1. I'm reading from the ESV. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. And placing her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. You can just imagine the response of the crowd. Do I know her? Isn't she so-and-so's wife? Everyone's staring at the woman. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say? They said this to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and he wrote with his finger on the ground. And they continued to ask him. And he stood up and said to them, Let him who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And once more he bent down and wrote on the ground. But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones. And Jesus was left alone with the woman. Jesus stood up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go your way and sin no more." What an amazing story. And let's just unpack this story a little bit. Jesus is teaching. It says all the people came to him. He's got a very large crowd around him. He's there early in the morning. So people obviously know that he's going to be teaching. See, Jesus is not in Jerusalem very often. He's harassed when he's there. He seems to stay outside of Jerusalem, but 3 times a year, every Jewish male has to go to Jerusalem for these feasts. So Jesus, when he's there, the people know that he's there, but also the scribes and the Pharisees know that he's there. And I'm sure that they spent a lot of time trying to figure out how they could trap him. You see, nobody stones people caught in adultery. That was something that they didn't do. But they want him to say that that's what should be done. And either way, they get him. Either way, either he says, "No, we're not doing that anymore," and he denies the law of Moses. Or he says, "No, we should stone her," and he loses all of his followers. So they've got him in quite a fix, and I'm sure they spent lots of time thinking of how to trap him. And through this crowd come these scribes and Pharisees with the woman in tow. And you can imagine they have to push their way through the crowd. It's not so easy to get to Jesus, but they are authoritative, and they are pushing their way in and dragging this woman with them. They get to the front and they stand her in the midst. She is now the center of attention. There she is. This woman has been caught in the act of adultery. And everyone is very glad they got up early in the morning to come to this, because this is quite a lot of excitement. This is more than they were looking for. But the scribes and Pharisees are always looking for a challenge, something to challenge his authority. So Jesus does something really amazing. He bends down and he starts to write with his finger on the ground. Why? Why is he doing that? I think there are a couple of reasons. One is when people come at you with accusations and aggression, he has learned not to respond immediately. They want an immediate response, which is, from my experience, my immediate responses are likely to get me in trouble. I'm likely to say something, exactly what they want me to say, in defense of myself, that is not going to be constructive. Maybe I'll say something to appease them. I mean, they are coming. There's probably, 8 or 10 of them. They are coming aggressively to get him to fall on one side or the other, to fall into their trap. One of the most beautiful things I see here is that Jesus takes the attention off the woman. He takes the attention off this humiliated woman, because as soon as he bends down, what's everyone doing? They're looking at him. That's exactly what he wants. She's standing right next to him, but they're no longer looking at her. Bless her soul. She's probably with her face covered. Her hair's a mess, I'm sure. She's probably wearing, maybe they let her get some clothes on. They wouldn't bring a naked woman to the temple, but maybe she has a bed sheet. Probably but she's not ready to stand in front of people, and certainly not to be accused of being an adulteress in front of people at this hour of the morning. Maybe not ever, but it's embarrassing for her, and Jesus does something so beautifully kind. He bends down and he takes the attention off of her. Now, they don't like that, and so they continue to pester him. They continue to harass him. What? Tell us an answer. Give us an answer. I think he also bends down because it's very possible he didn't exactly know what to say. I don't know what to say immediately when people come to me. I usually go away thinking of all the things I could have said, but my mind doesn't work like that. I'm not prepared with immediate responses. I'm a slower, more deliberate thinker. I want to give the right answer. I want to give the right counsel. And perhaps Jesus was also surprised. And when he got them out of his face, it's possible then he could hear the Father's voice, because he only did what he saw the Father doing. He only said what the Father was saying. And the Father said, "This is what I want you to say. Let he who is without sin be the first one to throw a stone at her." They had no intention of throwing stones at her. They just wanted to trap him. And it says and then he bent down again and started writing on the ground. And when they heard this, I don't know that anyone could see what he was writing on the ground. We make a big deal, well, what was he writing? Was he writing their names? Was he writing their sin? I can tell you that adultery was common in those days. It was especially among religious people. We see Paul in Romans chapter 2. He's talking to religious Jewish people who want to follow the law, and he says, "You who speak against adultery, do you commit adultery?" The religious people like to judge others, but they often are doing the same thing. So they leave one by one. They have to push their way through the crowd to leave. They realized, oh, I'm a sinner too, but I don't want to stand here and be publicly humiliated like we've done to this woman. I want to deal with my sin privately. I'm going to go away from this crowd. Because as soon as Jesus says, "Let him who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her," and then he bends down, who are the people looking at? The Pharisees. They're looking at the Pharisees. Well, all right, righteous people, which one of you is righteous enough to throw a stone? Brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. And they all leave. And they leave the woman there. Now it says she's alone with Jesus, without the Pharisees, but there is still a crowd there. He says, "I don't condemn you." It's interesting that they brought this woman to who they thought was a 30-something carpenter from Nazareth who is claiming to be a teacher. They call him teacher. They're bringing her to the one who wrote the law. They're bringing her to the one who wrote the law, the only one who could condemn her. And I believe he's saying, not your sin doesn't matter, don't worry about it. He's saying, I understand. The circumstances in your life that have caused you to seek comfort in the wrong place, to seek validation from the wrong source. I know the forces. I know how you grew up. I know maybe what's happened in your marriage. I understand what you're doing is not right, but I understand. I want you to go, and I don't want you to do that anymore. Now, the whole gospel, I think, is presented here because there we are, like sinners, with our sin, and Jesus then takes the attention upon himself and says, I will take your sin upon me. But he also says, go and sin no more. The only way she is going to be able to sin no more is if she becomes a disciple of Jesus. She's not going to be able to go and grit her teeth and say, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to do it. That's what the Pharisees were doing, and it doesn't work. Just behavioral modification is not enough. He wants us to be his disciples. He wants us to follow him. With him living inside of us, we are able then to overcome our sin habits. Let's just pause right there. There's a lot there. There's a lot of powerful spiritual food there. From, do I speak too quickly? Maybe I need to pause. To, how serious do I take my sin? Am I judging other people's sin? Maybe I need to take my own a little more seriously and repent. And then the saying of Jesus, neither do I condemn you. Jesus is not condemning us. He wants us to be like him. And condemnation doesn't produce people who want to be like Jesus. Forgiveness does. So let's pause for a bit and think about that. What I want to do now is go back and take a look. We've been going from the New Testament back to the Hebrew Scriptures, looking at who Jesus is claiming to be and the connections with some of his actions. And this idea that he's writing with his finger on the ground. In any of the videos that I've seen, the ground is dirt, and he's writing in the dirt. In the temple complex, is there any dirt? This is one of the wonders of the world that Herod the Great has built. It is not there's no dirt. It is all paved with stones, with flagstones, with tablets of stone. What is he writing on with his finger on the ground? Jesus is writing on tablets of stone. When has he done that before? In Exodus chapter 31, verse 18, and he gave to Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God. 2 tablets of stone written with the finger of God. Jesus, they're asking him about one of the commandments, thou shalt not commit adultery, and he bends down and starts writing with his finger on tablets of stone. Let's go back in Exodus and read a little bit and see more of this character who gave the stone tablets written with his finger to Moses. Because Jesus is claiming to be that character. Let's start in Exodus chapter 24, starting in verse 9. God invites the people to come up, 74 people. Verse 9. Then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, those are Aaron's sons, and 70 of the elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. There was under his feet, as it were, a pavement of sapphire stone, like the very heaven for clearness. And he did not lay his hand on the chief men of the people of Israel. They beheld God and ate and drank. See, they make a comment that no one got hurt because they're not used to seeing God up close. Now they saw God, the God of Israel. It doesn't appear that they saw his face. They saw his feet on a sapphire pavement, but they haven't seen his face. And that is an issue that I want to talk about, because that's where I have been confused if people are seeing the Son or if they're seeing the Father. And this is an issue because of what I'm going to be reading. Verse 12 of chapter 24. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there, that I may give you the tablets of stone, with the law and the commandment which I have written for their instruction." So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up into the mountain of God. There were 74 of them sitting there, eating and drinking with God. And then he calls Moses to come up on the mountain. One of the things that we have trouble understanding about God's interaction with the people, many would say, well, he seems vindictive or angry or aggressive. They have a problem. The problem is that God is good. He's unlike anyone they know. He's very, very good. Do the people of Israel appreciate his goodness? Mostly not. Slaves mostly appreciate doing things, being forced to do things, doing things that people insist that they do or demand that they do or force them to do. So this is their mindset. They have a slavery mentality. They're only going to do what they must do. And they are a polytheistic culture. They've brought some of their gods from Egypt. And as soon as Moses is gone for a couple of weeks, they tell Aaron to make another god for them so they can worship it. They will just move here and there, whatever works, whatever gets me out of a trouble or whatever gets me what I want. It's very much like us today. We'll worship whatever gives us what we want. So these 74 come up to him. First he says, keep them at a distance, but next thing you know, they're eating and drinking with God there. It appears he's covered by a cloud or something, but you see, he wants closeness. He wants intimacy. The problem is, if you have this closeness with God without the respect for God, you're going to be in trouble. There's something that is necessary for you to have a relationship with God. A healthy relationship requires trust and respect. So we first must respect him. And once we respect him, then we can trust him. And then God wants this intimacy with each of us. Verse 15 of chapter 24 of Exodus. From the ESV, then Moses went up on the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain, and the glory of Yahweh, the glory of the Lord, dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. And on the seventh day, he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. So Moses goes up there, and he's just waiting there for 6 days, and then God calls to him. Now the appearance of the glory of Yahweh was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. Moses entered the cloud and went up on the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So the fire of the Lord is on the mountain. It's a devouring fire. It's impressive. The people really don't want to go up. Moses goes up and meets with God. He gets the tablets of stone, but before he can come down, at about day 40, the people start worshiping a golden calf. Moses comes down the mountain. He is angry. He throws the tablets down. I think he had a little anger problem. These are the most precious things the world has ever seen. This is 2 tablets of stone written with the finger of God, and Moses broke them. But God was angry with the people, and Moses was mirroring that. Let's go to Exodus 33 and verse 7 to give us some idea of how God and Moses were communicating. Now Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. Everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise up, and each would stand at his tent door and watch Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. Wow. The Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks with his friend. Now, when it says face to face, it doesn't mean that Moses saw God's face. As we're going to find out in a couple of verses, Moses hasn't seen the face of God. God was covered with a cloud, but he spoke to him. God was speaking to him, and he was having a conversation with God. And we read that in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 4. It's talking about when the Lord spoke to the people, and it says the same thing. The Lord spoke with you face to face at the mountain, out of the midst of the fire. The people did not see God's face, but this expression face to face means that God was there talking with you. Moses goes back up on the mountain a second time with 2 new tablets of stone, which God says, cut 2 new tablets. He cut them the first time. Now he's getting Moses to make new tablets. Up he goes on the mountain for another 40 days and 40 nights. This time, Moses is frustrated as far as the people. They are a burden to him. And he wants something from God, something special. And he says then, if I have found favor in your sight, I want you to go with us when we're going to leave here, because they haven't yet gone into the promised land. They're still at Mount Sinai. And in Exodus 33, verse 18, Moses says something unprecedented. He says, Moses said, please show me your glory. Show me your glory. I want to see your glory. I want to see your power. And he said, this is God speaking, I will make all my goodness pass before you. All of his glory, all of his power is coming from his goodness. It's coming from his goodness. See, we see power on this earth as coming from really evil. It's coming from terrorism. It's coming from the ability to hurt you. God's power and his glory is coming from his goodness. I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you my name, the Lord, Yahweh, Jehovah. I will proclaim my name. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. But, he said, you cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live. So this is where I find some confusion. If we can't see the Father, I always thought that this was the Father that was speaking with Moses because you can't see his face. And we know that this Yahweh has appeared to Abraham and he saw his face. He had lunch with him, or at least he stood while God was eating lunch. So let's keep going. Exodus 33, verse 21. And the Lord said, Yahweh said, behold, there is a place by me where you shall stand on the rock. And while my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. My face shall not be seen. In Exodus 34, this is exactly what happens. The Lord, Yahweh, Jehovah, descended in the cloud and stood with Moses there, and proclaimed the name of the Lord, his name. He just said his name. At that point, they knew how to pronounce it. Yahweh, Jehovah. And Jehovah passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, Yahweh, Yahweh, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. This is how God speaks about himself. Merciful, I'm gracious, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. So Moses then sees his back, but he cannot see his face. The idea and the way that I put this together, why can't Moses see the face? If this is the Son of God, we know that other people saw his face. Why? So that's why there's confusion. Who is this that he's seeing, or whose face is he not seeing? The answer actually is quite simple. And we see that problem solved on the Mount of Transfiguration. We see that Jesus has a tremendous amount of power and glory that he is able to turn up and down. And when he turns it all the way up, you cannot see his face because you can't survive that. When he turns it down, you can have lunch with him, you can talk with him. On the Mount of Transfiguration, he's starting to turn it up. And again, who's he doing it for? For everybody? No. He's not doing it to show off. He wants to be known. Who do you think put the idea in Moses' head to ask him to show his glory? Who puts the ideas in your mind to ask for things, to ask for more of him? He wants to show his friends who he really is. He's so powerful that most people can't take it. They just want the power. But his power comes from his goodness. And he only wants to show that special power to his friends. He wanted Moses to see it, and only Peter, James, and John got to see it on the Mount of Transfiguration. But who else was there with Jesus? Moses was there with Jesus. Let's just pause. And I want you to reflect on what we've just talked about. How God sees himself. That his power is coming from his goodness. Is that how you see God? You see him as good. See, most of us have a problem. If we have all this power, why is he not doing what I want him to do? Why is he not solving my problems? And there is where we lose our faith. That's where we have this tension. Did Jesus use his power, which he showed? He walked on water. He fed 5,000 people. He did supernatural things. Did he do anything to make his life easier? One of the temptations was to make some bread when he'd been fasting for 40 days. That was the temptation. Hey, you have the power. Make your life easier. Make it easier for yourself. That's what we want. We want to make life easier for ourselves. Jesus is showing us something. He's on earth with all of this power, and he's not making life easier for himself. He's only doing what his Father wants him to do. And I can tell you that most everyone has this issue that God is not doing what we expect him to do. And we stand in judgment of him with whether it's world events or whether it's your local events of your life, that he's not making your life easier. He's training us. He's training us to believe him, to trust him, even if the problem doesn't go away. I want to pause now and take a moment for us to reflect on that. How do I see God's goodness compared at the same time with the things that I want him to do for me? Am I able to see that he's good even if he doesn't do what I want him to do when I want him to do it? Let's pause now. I want to talk about the Transfiguration, because that event, I believe, we start to see the power that Jesus has, who he really is, coming through his human frame. So let's turn to Matthew chapter 17, starting in verse 1. Matthew 17, verse 1. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise and have no fear. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. And then he tells them not to say anything until he has been risen from the dead. He doesn't want them talking about this, which is probably what Peter was thinking. This is going to be great for my career. I can use this power and I can use some of these resources in my networking with Moses and Elijah. This is going to be great for my career. Jesus, that's not why he has done this. There are 3 accounts of the Transfiguration, and if we put them all together, I see that Jesus was there with his 3 friends. He's brought his 3 friends up. In Luke's account, it says that Jesus was praying. As he was praying, and I wonder what he was praying. Maybe he was saying, I really would like to see Moses and Elijah, or maybe he was saying, Father, would you show my friends who I am? I think they're ready. And then the glory, the power was turned up. When people see his face shining like the sun, we have another episode of someone seeing Jesus' face shining like the sun. It is in the book of Revelation. John, who knew Jesus, sees his face shining like the sun. It's Revelation 1, I believe it's verse 12. He turned to see the voice speaking to him. His feet were like burnished bronze, refined in a furnace. I'm reading in Revelation 1:14. The hairs of his head were white, like white wool, like snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like burnished bronze, refined in a furnace. And his voice was like the roar of many waters. Verse 16, his face was shining like the sun, shining in full strength. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. When I saw him, boom, I fell at his feet, dead. Jesus touches him. He laid his right hand on me, saying, fear not, I am the first and the last. The response to seeing Jesus' face in its glory is that you fall down like you're dead. You have no strength in you. So there's radiating light coming through Jesus' clothing. His power is being turned up. Moses and Elijah, it says in one of the accounts, also are in glory. They are also glowing. In one of the accounts, it says they were terrified initially, and in the one we just read, they're terrified after the Father speaks. But I feel like when they start to see Jesus glow, that everyone gets scared. And one of the accounts says that Peter, the reason he speaks is because he's terrified. He just starts to talk. And there's a lesson there, that many of us use our speech to try to soothe ourselves, and we need to be quiet. I mean, the fact that the Father comes and rebukes Peter for speaking is quite a statement. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. Here's the beautiful part of this. The Father is quoting someone here, someone who is actually present in this group. In Deuteronomy chapter 5, Moses says this, Yahweh, Jehovah your God, will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your brothers. It is to him you shall listen. This prophet, you need to listen to him. Peter wasn't listening, he was talking. The Father is quoting Moses, who actually is present at this transfiguration. He's quoting Moses, this is the one I meant when I said, listen to him. This is my beloved Son, listen to him. Jesus then tells his followers not to talk about this. He then turns his glory back down, and by the time they leave the mountain, he looks just like he looked when he went up to the mountain. But this episode is showing us that he has the ability to let you see this glory, let you see his power or not. He doesn't flaunt it. When he's asked by the Pharisees to show us a sign, I'm sure they would have loved to see his face shine like the sun. He doesn't show it. He wants to show it to his friends. He's not doing it to impress people or so that you will be afraid and that you will believe in him because you're afraid. He wants you to be attracted to him for his goodness, for his beauty. And that's why we're spending time to magnify him. As we read in Psalm 34, verse 3, magnify the Lord. Let us exalt his name together. How do we magnify someone? Well, you can't make God any bigger, but we can make him bigger in our eyes. That's what a magnifying glass does. It makes it bigger to you. And I hope today that we've been able to make Jesus bigger to all of us. He's humble, and that's why it's hard to trust him sometimes. We think that we need to pay attention only to those who are aggressive, angry, demanding, threatening us. And Jesus wants to be followed for his goodness. He wants us to invite him to help us with our lives and with our problems because he's good and because he has lived a perfect life, a beautiful life. So let's pause now and think and ask Jesus, with his power, with his humility, and with his wisdom that he showed as he bent down and wrote on the tablets on the ground of the temple complex. His power and his goodness and his beauty that he showed to Moses on the mountain, which was like a fire, like a devouring fire. And also what he showed to his three friends on the Mount of Transfiguration. Let's just pause and invite Jesus, Yahweh, the Son of God, to come and help us with our issues. I want to finish with Isaiah 9:6. It is often read at Christmas time. For unto us a child is born, for unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and he shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father? Who are we talking about? I thought we were talking about Jesus, the Son. Unto us a son is given. Why does it say Everlasting Father? It's a bit confusing. And now I hope you understand. The Father is in the Son. That's why Isaiah is writing, if you've seen the Son, when you see the Son, you will be seeing the image of the Father. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. All are describing the Son. All are describing Jesus. He has all of that within him. Father, I thank you for everyone who has come today. I ask a blessing that we would see you this week as you are, in your humility, in your power, with your wisdom, with your counsel. The Lord bless you and keep you. Lord, make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. Lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. Amen. Go in peace.